and in fact, his book is up here. I'd
Right.
recommend anybody.
What's it called?
Called
Yeah, bring
Maurice
it down.
White, Life with Earth, Wind and Fire. I keep it up there just to always remind myself. But I recommend anybody to
I'll get
to
that.
read this. It's a fabulous book because he was a really deep man.
Yes.
You know, he was very interested in spirituality.
Yes.
He was very interested right before in meditation, in vegetarianism, in all kinds of open-minded spirituality right from the get-go, you know. And way before it was yoga, all these things, way before it was hip hop, you know, or you know. And Maurice talks about it all in here, and also how it impacted his band. And the thing was, Randall, I because of the success of Soul II Soul, somebody from his camp reached out to me, and he wanted to meet me and work with me. So I ended up spending 2 weeks with him in 1991. Can you imagine?
I know, I actually can't, but you know what?
I can't even believe I spent that time with this great man. Yeah.
But you know, it's important for, I think, anybody listening to realize that, you see, this is what happens. Greatness breeds greatness, attracts greatness. So at the end of the day, if Maurice White is reaching out to you in this way, then of course it's got to be a huge validation to every instinct and every ounce of talent that you have as a musician. So what did you guys work together on?
Well, we wrote some music. My production partner at that time was a guy called Lee Hamblin, who's not in music anymore, but he's has a yoga retreat place in Greece. He left the music industry.
Okay.
Lee is probably well known to a lot of people. He did Jalisa Anderson's album.
Okay, now Galactica Rush. Now I played a track from that album on my radio show, right? And I think, what track did I play? World Keeps Turning. Anyway, in playing that record, I had to tell the audience why I was playing it. And Galactica Rush is probably one of the best albums I own, and it's one of the greatest of that era. And it's a masterpiece. Man. It's an absolute masterpiece. And it's an album that when you happen upon people that know it, you can talk about it for hours. So once again, I'm not surprised that you know somebody like Lee Hamblin, because he too is he remains, whatever he's doing now, he remains to me one of the great producers and musicians that I've ever heard. And Galactica Rush is in my collection on CD, and it's going to stay there.
Man. That's lovely. There.
It's a wonderful
album. I was just talking with Lee. He people can look him up. Actually, he's on Facebook and Instagram, Lee Hamblin, but he's yoga is his thing these days, but he's still a very creative man. He's writing poetry these days. And some of these poems he's putting up at the moment are just astonishing. I recommend anybody to check them out. They're really quite exquisite.
I will do.
But he funnily enough, we were talking about something just the other day, and he mentioned, can you imagine, Simon, we were in a studio with Maurice White? Can you imagine that?
Absolutely.
And we were sort of having just like slightly pinching ourselves. We pinching ourselves at the time, but we were young guys and just making our way, and I now realize the serious heavyweight situation I was in at that time.
But so you sound like
forever grateful for that time. Yeah.
You sound like you weren't intimidated, though. You sounded like you were just excited by it.
Well, I think I was a bit intimidated because it wasn't the best work I've ever done. But and what happened was we wrote, I think it was about 5 songs or beginnings of songs that we wrote.
Right.
And then the album, and I can't remember what it was that came out. It was called Millennium or something.
Millennium, that's an Earth, Wind and Fire album.
Yeah. Or maybe Heritage, one of those two.
Okay, right.
Maurice was so sweet. He thanked us. We're in the thank yous, you know, for working on the record. And so our songs never made it, and they weren't fully fleshed out songs. They were tracks with just some melody ideas, but I've still got those on a DAT, and I will do something with them eventually, because but they're almost sacred to me, you know.
Yes,
they're
absolutely.
well, they are sacred to me. Yeah,
absolutely. So you mentioned Lee Hamlin left the industry to become a yogi. Now
proper yogi, proper yogi, man.
Good stuff, good stuff. So one might assume, knowing a little bit about the industry, that he fled the industry, okay, because the industry can be, as it was, could be quite an unforgiving place. Now, how has the industry changed from what you knew it to be to how to what it is now?
Well, oh boy, I mean, I've had ups and downs. I mean, it's a tricky business, and you know, I don't, you know, the one single thing which has changed everything is streaming, really.
Yes.
And we can't go back from that. That is there to stay. But I do think what us as creators receive from that, the revenue that we receive from that is pitiful, really. And it's a real you know, a real issue, and it's still to be resolved properly. You know, it's still a work in progress, so I'm hopeful that things will be more equitable. And you know, but I do like the way that there seems to be much more of a sort of emphasis on people playing live again now, and people really want to go and see music live, you know. Because I think people have realized that there's nothing like live music. It's just unbelievable. You know?
It reminds me of the early 20th century, that let's call it the jazz age, because it wasn't jazz age, where you had no choice. Singing live every night was what you had to do, you know. So you had the greats that we can all name toured maybe 50 weeks of the year all over the world, and I can only imagine that can only make one better at what you do. And we mentioned earlier on in the interview, you know, how valuable it is performing live in front of people and getting that sense in real time of the effect of what you're doing. In the end, you know, how your music communicates to the listener, there's no better way to experience that than performing it, you know. Absolutely. And indeed hearing it dropped in a club on a 12-inch, as you said, you know. And
well, that's very special too.
Absolutely. You know, so I mean, I can only imagine what that is like. But you know, seeing, like, for example, when you go to a gallery and see a painting, that's a very personal thing between yourself and whatever it is you're looking at. But being in a theater or a concert hall and seeing the effect that your music is having on, maybe it could be thousands of people in real time, must be something quite special. So, you know, how does that make you feel?
Oh, it's glorious. It's a really, I never tire of that feeling. I never tire of hearing my music. If it's playing in a supermarket or something, you know, I just get a warm glow, and I'm forever grateful I've did that song or whatever. And you know, I go straight back to making it and the beautiful people I worked with. And there's a couple of things I'd mention about this. It's like, one time, I don't play often with Soul II Soul live anymore. I did that for quite a while. But we played at Lovebox one time, the festival. And when Karen was singing "Yellow is the Color of Sun Rays," and it had been a really rainy afternoon, and she started singing "Keep on Moving," and when she got to that line, the sun just beamed out, and it was like everybody went,
wow.
That's one of the most magical moments of music I've ever experienced. I'm just there sitting playing the piano. I'm going, whoa, what happened there? That was crazy.
So I'm trying to shape this interview, this narrative, but we keep on coming back to Soul II Soul. So let's just talk about Soul II Soul. Okay. I was sort of wanting to finish on the topic of Soul II Soul, but Soul II Soul.
Well, we're Jazzy and I are brothers forever now, and Karen and I are sister and brother forever now.
Right.
And we're just forever joined, so, and I feel so grateful to have made all that music with them,
Okay. Well, speaking of the music you made with them, there is this on vinyl.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now, and you got the vinyl too, man. Good for you.
Nice. There you go. So
there's Beresford Romeo. There he is.
There he is, Mr. Jazzy B. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is an album called Club Classics Volume 1. That's what it was called in the UK. And it was the first album by Soul II Soul. Now, if by some chance you have no idea about this album and the quality of the album and what it means in the history of music, British music, soul music in general, then, go out and buy yourself a copy, sit yourself down and have a listen.
Have a cup of tea.
There you go. Whatever your beverage of choice is, and listen. And you know what? I cannot guarantee what you will make of it, but I can guarantee one thing: you will feel something positive. That is, when you experience, and it is an experience, this album. So tell me how this project was born and how the association between yourself and Karen and Jazzy, how was that born?
Well, it started because I was going to their club, their night at the Covent Garden, the Africa Centre in Covent Garden. And so, once Jazzy started playing our 12-inch City Heat, he asked me to come to the studio and started working. By that time, they'd already they'd already put out Fair Play, the first song from the album. And that was the first single that came out. It didn't even have an album deal yet. It was a singles deal.
Right. Yeah.
With 10 records. And but that really blew up, that tune.
Classic.
I was at I tell this story a lot, so forgive me if there are listeners hearing me.
I haven't heard it. So
you haven't heard it? Okay.
No, go ahead.
We were at the Africa Centre one Sunday night because it was a Sunday night jam, and a big announcement. Jazzy in his thick North London accent. All right, everybody, got a tune to play for you now. It's our tune, So he said something like that, and he played it, and I swear to you that the club went dead. Like everyone just stood around.
Right.
It's heavy, and it was like, it was a slightly different kind of groove.
Yeah. It is.
But then, after about a minute or half a minute, heads started to nod.
Yeah.
And then about a minute in, everyone's dancing, and by the end, people going nuts.
Absolutely.
Because Rose Windross just flying around. With her sort of scat, jazzy, crazy singing. Dirty bass line, filthy bass line, and it was magical. And I already knew these guys are going somewhere. Something's happening here. This is like bubbling up like crazy. And then, then to be invited down the studio, and we were all young. They didn't know what they were doing. We were just all making it up as we went along, man.
Right.
I brought the skills I had, which is I know how to play piano. I know a bit about music.
Right.
I do some backgrounds on that album. We were short of background on one thing.
Okay.
There's a song on there called Holding On, which I'm so pleased Jazzy actually sings now.
Oh my God, have a look at the older track list. So for those of you who don't know, I'm removing the inner sleeve from the outer sleeve. Okay, this is what people used to do.
Lovely women.
Absolutely.
That's for me, and Chantal, I think, is the other singer, but the main dancer there with the long dreads is Wumi, who's she's incredible.
And she's in the Back to Life video, isn't she? Doing her thing. Yeah, and a few other videos, I believe. Yeah,
she's extraordinary. Yeah,
and I believe she was also in Karen's Living in the Light video as well as one of the dancers in that. I believe. Yeah, and it's just another great talent that was, you know, part of the mix. Now let me have a look. What is the track that you mentioned?
Well, there's a track called "Holding On" there, which Jazzy sings. And, you know, Jazzy's got a voice. It's not a singer's voice.
Oh, yeah.
But he's got vibes and he's power and he's got a big voice.
Yes.
And I was always encouraging him to sing, you know, and when that song started to, we wrote that song together.
Right.
And he was singing it, and we didn't have a chorus. So I did a whole bunch of backgrounds on the chorus. And then I went to a club. In those days, you know, you'd get an acetate cut and you try out the mix before it comes out, just see how it went. I think it was a Dance Wicked night. There were these nights called Dance Wicked where it wasn't Soul to Soul. They may have been providing the sound system, but it was as he was DJing, but lots of other people too.
Right.
And he plays this acetate, and it's my background's all over it, booming out in the club. And I'm honestly, I'm like Homer Simpson, just going back into the hedge. Because it was just a scratch vocal, you know, but it sounded good. Apart from that bit, happily, in the finished version has beautiful Zulu singing on it, like the South African singers
in the credits. Now, let me just quickly find out the name of the person that provided that.
Yeah, what was the name of that group?
Zulu vocals. Is it Shakisha?
Shakisha, yes, Shakisha, yeah.